and purposes are almost always found on ideas. The idea of Nigeria is a very, very bad idea. The idea that undergirds this country, that informed the design of the entire superstructure of governance, is a very bad idea. Nigeria is not found on the idea of citizenship. It is found on the idea of feudalism, the acceptable non-equality of persons who live within the same geographical space. That is why the law does not rule in Nigeria, because it cannot apply to all equally. That is the bad idea that rules Nigeria, that is ruining it. Nigeria is found on the bad idea of feudalism.
So, how do we correct this bad idea, or is it a case of the nation is doomed for failure? Because some people will call you a messenger of doom if you say we're doomed. Are we doomed?
The one thing about the truth is that it has very little respect for the opinions of those to whom it is delivered. What they do with it is entirely up to them. All I have pointed out is the fact that the way we are, our current trajectories, will not deliver anything positive. That is not a message of doom. It is a message demanding that we find redirection and then correct the error that has been pointed out. The antidote to feudalism is citizenship. If we elect to construct a country found on citizenship, we would have successfully walked away from the madness that has overtaken us. So it's not like we are in a situation where doom is unavoidable. What is making it seemingly unavoidable is the refusal of the Nigerian ruling class to address the problem that has been identified. The belief that they can continue on this unsustainable trajectory and deliver something sustainable. That is why it seems like it's gloom and doom. All Nigeria has to do is yoke the country to the rule of law. If you yoke the country to the rule of law, where the courts become effective, the constitution, as imperfect as it is, begins to reign supreme, we would have begun our journey to sanity. But we cannot continue our current trajectories and then expect that something positive will come out of what is manifestly evil. That is why it might seem like it's gloom and doom. It will be gloom and doom if we do not change our trajectory.
How do we begin to change? Because where we are now, some people said, oh, the economy is better than what it used to be. And I asked them the question, the economy as it relates to the macroeconomics, where some statistics are being said to look good, and some accountants or political economists said the numbers are massaged, but whether it's massaged or not, they still seem good. But that's macroeconomics. The man on the street doesn't do macroeconomics because that's not his business. He's only interested in what he eats today and how he takes care of his children and how he will ensure his wife will not die just because of malaria. That's not macroeconomics. That's simple, basic economy. Your thoughts?
I think the greatest error we all make, especially when we are considering Nigeria, is that we assume that the operators of the Nigerian system are unaware of the truth of what they are doing. So we measure what they have done and we say, oh, they failed in this place or they failed in that place. They have not failed. The system is working exactly as it is designed to work. When they point to those figures and they tell you about how well the economy is doing, they are completely correct, because what they want to achieve is exactly what they are achieving, the impoverishment of the Nigerian mass. When a people have been rendered completely impoverished, it becomes easy to be donating rice to them as the cure and elixir for all of their problems. So if the people who talk about insecurity, you give them one bag of rice. They will talk about bad road, you give them one bag of rice. They talk about bad healthcare system, you give them one bag of rice. We talk about all the children who are out of school, you give them another bag of rice. Rice has become the currency and elixir to every Nigerian problem. That is because the system as operated is designed to ensure the full feudalization of the country. And that can only happen when the people are sufficiently impoverished, sufficiently made ignorant. So when you talk about macroeconomics and you then begin to refer to the micro level where the man on the street, who knows how many meals he's able to afford in a month, who knows that he's living in a place that is unfit for human habitation. A man you are paying, you say it's 70,000 naira, that is your minimum wage. The reality is that if that man ignores to file his tax return, the fine is 100,000 naira. A bag of rice will take away more than half of his salary. So you have deliberately pauperized him. It's not as if you don't know what you're doing. Those are deliberate choices. The same government and country that can afford to keep lawmakers in luxury, governors living like pashas, the same country that can choose to build roads without tenders, that can choose to just throw money around like drunken sailor, is ensuring that the opportunity for the people to enrich themselves have been shut down and the process of impoverishment has been weaponized for all. So those numbers and the interpretation that persons in government are giving to it, I think we should take it as their own measurement of the economy. And then we should then take the time to be honest enough with ourselves. Are the people truly better off today, or are the people deeper in poverty? Their own figures will suggest we have over 140 million Nigerians living in multi-dimensional poverty, and they are clapping for themselves about a good economy.
Okay, so let me then look at it from this perspective. You have described our elections as a hollow ritual at some point.
Well, and once upon a time you had the hollow rituals. Now you are not even going to have any hollow rituals, don't worry.
Oh, so it's not going to be, what would we be expecting to have come 2027?
What can you possibly expect? Reality is, you and I have sat in this studio, I believe it was over 2 years ago, closer to 3 years ago, and I told you categorically at the time that there will be no election in 2027. And there is nothing that has happened to suggest that I was off tangent. Everything that has happened up until this point, since 2023, confirmed what I told you at that time. And it wasn't like I was gazing at some crystal ball. All I had to do was look at what happened in 2023. Persons who had no business, even in the elections, not just, when you focus on the presidency, you lose sight of the emergence of people like Akpabio, who emerged in the Senate in spite of the fact that they were not even qualified to run. They were expressly disqualified by provisions of the Electoral Act. Akpabio, Lawan, but they ended up in the Senate, and the courts endorsed it. So you had a situation where our judicial system has become an instrument for working from the question, from the answer to the question. So they do it first, and then they find a way for the judiciary to ratify what is already done. So the judiciary is no longer there to adjudicate based on law and equity. It is there to rationalize what has been done that should never be done. All of a sudden, we don't know the meaning of hand any longer. There are multiple things that have established the complicity of the judiciary in the mess that we found ourselves in. So it's, when you're now talking about election in 2027, you're dealing with a situation where the INEC, the judiciary, everybody is working to ensure seamlessly that there are no viable platforms for anyone to contest elections.
So how do we have a democracy that...
We've never had a democracy. We've only ever had a performative shadow of a democracy. And whatever performative shadows we once had were effectively destroyed in 2023. That was the last pretense at an election.
So you have said the Nigerians are not citizens. And
how can you have citizens in a place not ruled by law?
So if you don't have citizens and you don't have democracy, and your view is that there is no election, it used to be hollow, but now there's not even going to be an election. Again, it brings us down to this point where we say, are we in a situation where we're doomed for failure?
No. See, every nation in the world today once found itself pretty much where we are. That was the point where human beings would have to ask themselves if they still retain the capacity to evolve and find solutions to their existential problems. The existential problem of the Nigerian today is the governance system in Nigeria. The idea of feudalism that denies equality and citizenship to the Nigerian and renders it impossible to have a society governed by law. That is the challenge of the Nigerian, whether they are young or old. We must all recognize the fact that the absence of the rule of law has guaranteed that things will remain where it is the whim of men, just the mere whims of puny men who do not even have the imagination to evolve a better country. Those will be what will continue to rule us until we evolve a system that is anchored to the law. Having identified that, we must now ask ourselves, why has it proven so difficult to evolve such a society, and why has this evil endured for as long as it has endured and would appear to have even been strengthened? Reality is that it is our many divisions, our readiness to be divided on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of religion, on the basis of even sectarian differences within the same religion, our readiness to be divided by all of those makes it difficult for us to realize the many things that unite us. There is already a commonality of the afflictions. Whatever amount I'm paying for petrol in Lagos is what they will pay in Kaduna. Maybe they will even pay more in Nnewi. All of us are in the same pot. People are finding reasons to tolerate the evil because they find solidarity with parts of the same class that is afflicting all of us. They will remind us of ethnic differences. But when it comes to that place where you see the beneficiaries, nobody is asking the ethnicity of the next man. If you want to see how laughable it is, look at their city boy movement. Some of the biggest Igbo boys, they are the prime movers of city boy movement. And then one idiot, Mukaila in Ajegunle, who has barely had a meal to eat today, will be abusing Chinedu. Chinedu will be abusing Adekunle. But the reality is that when it comes to the beneficiaries, nobody is checking their ethnic identity or their religious identities for that matter. So it is when Nigerians come to the understanding of the fact that they need to find common purpose. If your afflictions are the same, why is it so difficult to find common purpose to resolve the problems? Education is comatose in the north, west, south, east, everywhere. The healthcare system is the same, collapsed. Security is the same, collapsed. There is nothing for the common man, regardless of where he is from. One of the most afflicted parts of Nigeria when it comes to insecurity today is Katsina. That was Buhari's home. Now it's become a wasteland of banditry simply because compromises were made. So the man in Katsina is suffering the same banditry that the man in Kwara, in Ogun State, in even Oyo State, everywhere. We are all suffering from the same things, but we are failing to evolve common solutions to common problems.
Okay, before we wrap up this segment, let me bring this to a point where I'm asking, is our problem a systemic problem or something to do with leadership? Because you said, what I've heard consistently from so many other people is that if we have the right leaders, the systems will change, solutions will come. But others are saying if we have a system, whoever emerges as leader, they follow the system. So chicken and egg? Help me.
It's the system. It is always the system. If it isn't for the system, how come the good governor is the outlier? You have 36 state governors. The only one we talk about when you want to talk about good governance, we all know who that one is. But the minute he leaves that office, nobody is bound to replicate what he had done. Peter Obi was the measure of good governance. He left more than 10 years ago. He's been, in fact, like 16 years now that he's been out of power. The people who have followed him, have they built on what he did? So you can, by sheer force of your personality, make a difference. But as long as that system that is unmoored to law, that allows the person occupying the office to do as he pleases, as long as that system is sustained, you cannot have good governance. You can have the occasional totem of good governance here, and there are persons who, based on their own conscience, decide to do better. But that is all you have. If they elect not to do the same, if they just want to be like every other person and be swallowing the money and ignoring the people, they will do it and nothing will happen. A place that is unyoked to law, a system that is built with impunity in mind, is not capable of delivering anything sustainable. So it's the system you need to fix. If the system will hold people accountable, if governors know that the people's vote would count and they need to deliver on their campaign promises, they will do better.
Are you advocating rebellion?
I have been advocating a revolution in Nigeria for over 15 years. I'm not talking about a armed insurrection where people are carrying guns, running riot on the street, but it is surely critically clear to every sentient being who can still think that our current trajectories are not sustainable. Definitely not sustainable. But the beneficiaries of this system have equally shown very clearly that they have no interest whatsoever in changing this system because it works for them. But it is also the duty of those for whom the system does not work. It is their duty to look beyond their multiple contrived divisions to find common purpose. If we can find common purpose, how many are the people holding us down? How many are we? If we all spoke to ourselves across the divide and we decided that, okay, let's pass a message to the ruiners of this country. Okay, on Tuesday next week, let everybody sit at home. If you went on the street in protest, M0nster has already shown us what the system is capable of doing. There is no point in being silly and then encouraging people to come to the street when we already know that the system is happy to deploy soldiers, murder however many numbers, and completely deny the existence of such killings. So why would I then encourage anyone to go onto the street? But spend the time to educate yourselves. Look, this is the way this thing is going. It's not sustainable. Let us all agree to send a message to our rulers. On Tuesday, sit down at home. If I'm not on the street, who are you going to shoot? If I'm not burning tires, who are you going to accuse of destroying anything?
But the IPOB tried that.
Let's get something clear. IPOB tried it and it was very, very effective. Because if it wasn't effective, you will not have Soludo demanding that people open their store, or there will be legal consequences to staying at home. The question is, have Nigerians tried it? IPOB tried it, it was effective. I'm not speaking to the mode of enforcement and the way other actors came into their game and turned the whole thing into a bloody spectacle. But I do know that before there was IPOB sit-at-home, there were sit-at-homes in 94, 95 in this same Lagos and Nigeria during the years of the pro-democracy struggle. I was part and parcel of that. I was in the student union in those days. And I know that we took part at multiple levels. There are alternative forms of protest other than going on the street. What our people do not want to do is the legwork required to go and talk to the market woman the market woman whom the APC and other political organizations have systematically co-opted into the instrument of their own oppression. We have a duty to go and talk to them. We can't be speaking over their heads and demanding that they sit at home when we've not explained the reasons to them. Those are the kind of hard work that a lot of right activists are afraid of taking on, that makes it unattractive for them to talk about sit at home, and they'll rather come to the street. All you need to block a street, maybe 10 people. You come on the street, so that would appear to be more effective. But the reality is it's not sustainable. We have to find other ways that do not present the people as sitting ducks to a system that has proven itself manifestly murderous. That would be irresponsible.
Okay, recently said the tweet you made on April 1, and I quote, let me read it. The opposition are preparing for an election. INEC, the judiciary, and Tinubu are prepping for a coronation. What exactly do you mean by that?
Exactly what I said. The opposition will tell you they are preparing for an election in 2027. But you can only have elections where the will of the people reigns supreme. In a place where the will of the people counts for little, where everything would eventually come down to whatever INEC says it is and whatever the judiciary will tolerate, there is very little hope of any substantive change coming out of that kind of process, especially if one takes the benefit of the lessons of our recent history. The chairman of an INEC that promised high rev, beavers, promised real-time results being available to all, declared in the middle of the night, go to court, after declaring the winner of an election where he can't even produce a credible result. He simply said, go to court, and when the people who went to court, we all knew exactly what happened. And then in the lead up to the tweet that you've referenced, the shenanigans in the ADC had just started. And then I was just laughing because it wasn't a surprise. The one thing I know this government would not want is a platform from where any credible candidate can emerge to challenge the president in the coming election. So me, I know that whatever they are working from the answer to the question. The answer is there mustn't be a credible candidate on the ballot. However that will be achieved, whether judgments will be procured, whether INEC will turn the constitution and law on his head, it wouldn't matter.
So are you making the INEC and the judiciary complicit?
They are complicit. That's not.
Are you calling it a conspiracy?
It's not a conspiracy.
Then what is it?
It's just a statement of fact. There is nothing independent about INEC, and there is certainly no hope in our judiciary. Those are statements of fact. We should.
But some lawyers will tell you that Nigerian judiciary is not completely bad.
You say what? It's not completely bad, but it's
there are
badly,
bad eggs.
Oh, bad eggs. Yeah. Let me put it this way. If you brought out 10 justices and only 2, even if it's only 1 that is bad out of the 10, you're already talking about a terrible judiciary. But I assure you that perhaps...
There are no saints anywhere. You don't have
no. You don't need to have saints to build a country. You can have crooks. As long as the law rules and everybody is obliged to follow the law, as long as the rules are clear and is not subjective, they are not subjective or subject to the whims of men, as long as these are there, then there is no problem. Where the problem emerges is when there aren't adherence to rules, where you do not have the rule of law, where the whims and caprices of men rule over law. And that is where we are. So it's not about a conspiracy theory. It's about a situation where we have an INEC that is not yoked to law. It can declare whatever it cares to declare. It doesn't have to follow its own rules and guidelines. That has been established. we were told up until the day of the presidential election that Beavers would work, he would upload to IREF, and then we had a glitch. Nobody can talk about what the glitch is up until today. And all of a sudden, subsidiary legislations made pursuant to the powers of INEC under the Electoral Act were no longer binding INEC. It didn't matter again, and even the courts upheld that. So what kind of fool would I have to be before I would hypnotize myself into believing that we have a credible electoral system? A system that has been rendered deliberately impotent by the operator. We have more than sufficient laws.
So are you saying that you have no hope with regards to INEC as it is structured, and despite the change in leadership?
Let me say,
with the new INEC chairman?
The new INEC chairman is the old INEC chairman. It's always about a system. A system where the president, who is interested in the election, is the sole appointer of all the persons in INEC. How are you even expecting to find anything good coming out of that place? How? I would have to self-hypnotize myself before I buy into the delusion that Amupiton, even especially with his ADC shenanigan. How am I going to be so foolish as to, even if the man had any good intention, if he had good intentions, he wouldn't even be in that office in the first place. There is no way he would have been sat in that office if his intentions were good. The persons who appointed him do not have good intentions. If they had good intentions, they would admit to the fraud of 2023, re-establish the confidence of the electorate in the process, and then maybe someone like me would be like, okay, now they've corrected their error, they've admitted to it, they are promising that Beavers will work, everything will go on IREF. Then I would have seen improvement in the elections held after 2023. But all the elections held after 2023 further strengthens my faith in my conviction that we can't have free and fair election.